what a wonderful time it is to be joined by Reverend Seth Wispelwey, who is, and I welcome him to our screen. He is the Minister for Economic Justice here at the National Ministry setting and is a really, really good friend of mine. The whole reason why I even really sought some leadership in the United Church of Christ was because of the many conversations and the hospitality that Seth and them and his family showed me many, many years ago. So I want to just thank Seth for all that he is in the world. He probably didn't know that I was going to go there today, but it's just an honor to be at the national setting working alongside you. And you're doing such important work, Seth. And so before we get started, I want to ask you really, because it's Nurture the Soul, how is your soul, or how do you find yourself nurturing your soul today?
Oh, that's really kind. And thank you for having me, dear friend and colleague. I'm grateful to be here. I am also calling in from the same city on occupied Tohono O'odham land in Tucson, Arizona. My soul, as I'm sure resonates with a lot of folks joining today, is feeling a bit compressed. Some of that's very practical. Here in Tucson, we are over 110 degrees for several days before now, and apparently several days coming up. Um, Makes it hard to go outside. There's some claustrophobia there, but it's connecting in ways like this when I pause to take some, deep breaths, pause with my 1 year old that will nourish my soul. And so that holds the balance for me, recognizing we are in monsoon season, and as bleak and punishing, dare I say satanic as the heat can get, we are surprised by storms that aren't in any forecast that nourish our land with a whole bunch of rain in this season. And so I hold on to that. Um, yeah, my soul is tired, but some of that might be just lack of sleep. But a lot of it is the headlines. And so I'm grateful, though, to talk about ways we, especially as communities of faith and conscience, can kind of transcend headlines and tell our own stories. So I am uplifted.
Yeah, I love that. Amen. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I feel like anybody who's not from Arizona or has been in Arizona for a while, like you talk about weather and it's a passing thing, but weather really dictates everything we do certain times of the year, right? So, yeah. And I love the warnings that say, oh, thunderstorm warning. And I'm like, really? Where? And then you said, when it's not in the weather, it pops and it's beautiful. So I
Mhm.
invite all of you, despite our tone today, to come visit us in Arizona. It's beautiful here. Um, it helps you understand why we need to work so hard to care for each other because reciprocity is alive and well here in the desert. You know, Seth, you and I, while we do live in the same town, but I think everyone heard that you have a 1 year old, so time gets dictated differently when you have babies and toddlers. So we don't get to see each other as much. We don't get to talk as much as I want in the professional world either, because of the things that are just the roller coaster of things that are coming up that we as national staff members try to help um, illuminate, sit and meander in, and kind of work alongside of our colleagues at the local church level to reimagine who we are at this time. And so in that, we don't get to chat. So I'm wondering what is happening in the world of economic justice? Like, what is it that you've been working on now that you've been in the position for a couple of years? Yeah, help us understand why this is important and what you're doing.
Oh gosh, we have until next Wednesday, right, for that answer. No, it's a good question, and you touched on a couple things that I hope we can revisit over the course of this time together. Reciprocity and just trying to kind of track with the flow of all things. Because when it comes to economic justice, really and truly, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. We understand that everything is economic justice and vice versa. There is no individual particular issue that is divorced from the ways we understand what it means to be economical, and the way we organize our economies, the ways we have our needs met or not met, our investments, whether they flourish or not, and what things are invested in. So the world of economic justice is everything. I'm going to touch on a few things, but first I'm going to say something that I always have to preach to myself, and I certainly have preached a lot as a pastor and in my own role, because economic justice is intimately woven into every aspect, every headline, almost the entirety of our Holy Scripture, God's passion and concerns. Um, I have a background in grassroots organizing primarily. And the first thing I'll say as an encouragement up front as we really start to wade into a few things is that for churches and individuals within churches and for all organizations seeking justice in the world, not to an encouragement not to try to be responsible for all the things all the time, both mentally, spiritually, but also practically and programmatically. Um, we will burn out, fall out, and at very best spread ourselves a mile wide and an inch deep and not manifest that which we want to see in deep and long ways. That's not to say we can't care about hashtag all the things, or that churches can't be a safe place to facilitate plugging people into their chosen calls and passions, but as institutions and certainly as individuals, sitting with ourselves, locating where is my heart stirred most, what brings me most alive to address, no matter how difficult that issue or impossible it might seem to surmount, for example, and going long and deep in those ways, not just in pursuit of a goal, but also in terms of the intent with which we cultivate community and support and solidarity so that we can be in these things for the long run. So let me just get that little sermonette out of the way. And then also say broadly, before we narrow it down, that things are precarious, and that's probably an understatement, increasingly so. I have several headlines pulled up here from several recent reports that a single adult needs at least $80,000 salary in every state of the United States to comfortably meet their needs. A family of four needs 200,000. Now, this is these numbers are far beyond the so-called federal minimum poverty level, right? For a family of four, wages have not kept up. Worker rights are being gutted at the same time. A headline that came across my way just before we logged on is that the current administration is terminating most contracts with federal unions at the Department of Veteran Affairs, our soldiers. This illegal union busting and violation of union contracts will affect 400,000 workers and is one of the most aggressive anti-labor moves the administration has made so far, which is saying something. Um, and then more broadly, we do not have universal healthcare. I was listening to the testimony of a mother who recently got a raise at work, but that kicked her off Medicaid. So now she has to spend $460 a month adding her kids to her private insurance. She's losing money because she got a raise. Um, I could go on and on and on, but just to say also there is no state, county, city in the U.S. where minimum wage covers a two-bedroom apartment for a family. These are the facts, and I don't say this to throw us all into a deeper despair or doldrums or overwhelm. Just the opposite. I think as people of faith and conscience, we're called to name as clearly and bluntly as possible the reality of things so that we can accurately locate within ourselves the ways in which we have power, the ways in which we have community, but also more importantly, spiritually and mentally give ourselves permission to be free of trust in a system that the data is not there, the a system that it's not fighting for us. Our elected leaders, certainly at the national level on both sides, are not fighting for us. And I say all of that as a precursor to get back to reciprocity, because I think churches and communities of faith and conscience, this excites me greatly. And I know a lot on this call are going to be aware of this term and probably already plugged in, um, but are already, whether they know it or not, part of kind of the new solidarity economies that I believe are necessary for human survival and thriving, and also survival and thriving of creation. And that's churches are mutual aid networks. We might not be doing mutual aid in the way some like activists do it and everything, but if we can understand, I'm just even pulling up the Wikipedia definition here for those who are less familiar. Mutual aid is an organizational model where voluntary collaborative exchanges of resources and services for common benefit take place amongst community members to overcome social, economic, and political barriers to meeting common needs. So I'll read that again. Mutual aid is an organizational model where voluntary, collaborative exchanges of resources and services for common benefit take place amongst community members to overcome social, economic, and political barriers to meeting common needs. What I heard is church, right? And or what church can be and understand itself to be. We are organizing bodies. We might organize more around this or that aspect of our community life, but going forward, and certainly, in the United Church of Christ and for all churches and denominations that have come alive to the beautiful claims Jesus's ministry and mission lay on us, I think having this understanding of ourselves in our back pocket, because I have not lost hope and I still do this work. This will be the last thing I say. I still do this work and try to remain in community because I see and know and hear how hungry people are and churches are for the story we say we share, and I believe can bring to scale in profound ways with resources we have at our disposal. I'm not saying give up entirely on political processes and using people power in the broader community, but it's like when we locate ourselves as a source of mutual aid and power, we can leverage so much more. Just here in Tucson, yesterday, rapid mobilization this summer over the course of just 2 months got our city council to unanimously shoot down an Amazon data center that would have guzzled hundreds of millions of gallons of water that we don't have a year. So there are linings. Okay, where was I? Where were you? We are talking about, I mean,
Yes.
hey, I got it done sooner than next Wednesday, I guess.
Yes, indeed. But you said all the things, right? So I want to just like reflect a little bit because you gave us some facts, right? And these are things that, and even using the term headlines, right? These are the headlines that we see, however it is that we ingest our news, however it is that we become informed, right? So I want to invite us, because you had said as an invitation to the question was, I invite you to care about all of the things, but focus on the one. To focus on the one. And that because so many of them are intersected, right? Our problems, our issues, our contentions are intersected in a lot of ways, right? So if you're focusing on immigration, I guarantee it has something to do with labor. If you're focusing on labor, I guarantee it has something to do about housing. If you're focusing on housing, it has something to do about racism, right? So like, and then so on and so on, right? So I really like that. I really like that you invited us to feel and care about all the things, focus on the one. But I want us to embody that, right? Like, what does it mean for us to, like, I really like how you invited us to think about, what excites you. I remember being a kid and being really excited about something, and I'd be like, oh, my parents used to tease me. They'd be like, oh, Ellie's really excited. But that was my body's response to being really amped about something, right? And so hearing about the news about Tucson and the mobilization to to temporarily stop, for however long we can stop billionaires from taking land, get really, really giddy about it. And so that is where I became involved in that work, because I care very deeply about our desert, right? And so I know in my body, I felt that here. I felt the butterflies in my stomach. I wanted to take a different posture, like I no longer was like curled over. Not that this is always a sign of defeat, because it's not, it's a sign of comfort. But I like raised up and made myself a little bit bigger, right? And so this is what the Spirit, we're like Pentecost, right? So like we're filled with the Spirit. We're filled with the Spirit, and just being able to slow down and pay attention. And I think what else I liked what you said was about the mutual aid networks, and you emphasize certain words. I don't know if you noticed that even when you repeated it, but the emphasizing of the certain words really brought that invitation for us to go, y'all, this is church. We're already doing the work, right? We both have done some curriculum work around the Building Up the New World text that was this year's All Church Read. And it clearly states in there, y'all are already doing the work of mutual aid. And I think that that's an important invitation for us to go, oh, well, what do you mean? And so thinking about, there are a couple people put some stuff into chat already. You have your food pantries, right? You have your meal trains for people who are ill. You go out and you take people to doctor's appointments. That's for the common good, y'all. Like yes, it is helping one person, but that's for the common good. Right. So we do these just little small acts that are the most impactful. Right. And the most powerful in a time when we're really being invited to be discouraged, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And if I could speak to that, I love that you talked about kind of the somatics of stuff and noticing our bodies. I don't mind sharing that I've been a beneficiary of tremendous somatic trauma-informed work to understand and listen. And as folks have probably heard in some ways regarding headlines, like the chaos is the point, to feel disoriented, to feel heightened all the time. And also the technology is designed that way. The supercomputers in our pockets and the notifications are meant to kind of zip zap our brains that distract us from deep Sabbath breath, Sabbath gathering, that then can say, wait, no, what are we about? We're about feeding the poor, and how are we going to bring that to scale? I love that someone put those examples in the um, um, chat, because we have baked in survival biological responses into our bodies. They're gifts. When things are distracting and traumatizing, even if it's vicarious trauma. I recently wrote a piece on moral injury. When we witness things that are morally abhorrent to us and see and feel unable to prevent them, or see those we trust to prevent them, like our elected leaders, actually doing the things, um, that can cause a fight, flight, or freeze response. A lot of people are fighting it, and there's no right or wrong response in there. These are natural, baked-in things, and this has a lot to do with the economic justice we say we want. And so that's why I like that we're starting by affirming, like, being overwhelmed is a natural response. It's in community, co-regulating with others, that we can find our fight energy and our hope together. The powers that be are over investing in all this dumbifying tech to keep us frozen and numb and fawning, right? And to be human is to break bread around a banquet table, not being stuck going up to our own buffet and not talking to others. Or fighting over, the chicken wings and the beans and that sort of thing, to just run with that metaphor a sec. Two quick examples that might serve as a good segue to talking about the specific deep grooves I'm trying to come alongside churches with as Minister for Economic Justice, who is trying not to do all the things all the time, all at once. That I love, brought up by the food pantry example. It reminds me of a couple churches I've been a part of or connected to. There's one small church, and I bring this up as an example because, a lot of our churches can feel small, or maybe they aren't the size they used to be. Two things. I think by leaning more into this work and just being community, being what the community needs for ourselves and together, like grocery inflation is hitting all of us. Like higher prices are hitting all of us. It's not like, oh, the needs out there and not in here. Um, we'll bring people into our pews as a side bonus, but I'm thinking of a small church that realized, you know what, we're probably not going to be what we were in the 80s or 90s necessarily, but we have this wonderful property and resources. And they did a deep dive into like, what are our core passions? If we can't do all the things anymore capacity wise. What if, and so they did an appreciative inquiry, strategic planning. They came up with like, we have this basement um, that we could transform with the resources we have. And we named that hunger and feeding people and making sustainable food economies in Charlottesville. This is my hometown of Virginia, um, is how we feel called. And if we put most of our eggs into that basket, aside from Sunday services and other programming, we are going to feel fulfilled collectively. And so they did. And they transformed their whole basement into like a professional commissary kitchen. They got the zoning checked out so that with an explicit goal that poor single Black mothers could use to do startup businesses and take classes. Um, um, and to bring to wide scale like food pantry possibilities and act as a way station for different service entities in Charlottesville. And I love that example. Another one is a church I was a member of in Austin, Texas, when I lived there. Uh, got the youth involved. Like, how can youth be a part of the story of the service? What do we have to give up? Because I know a lot of folks want the young ones, or to not have it be like this sidecar, to like, here's our church, and then here's their little thing. So they got a literal shopping cart from a local grocery store, um, and the youth decorated it. And during the offertory time, and this is a church with a long walk up to the pulpit, um, during the offertory time, in addition to money and so on, folks would bring the food goals, and the kids would push the cart and run all around the service. And this literalization, but also people would remember is like this week we're going to go all out on peanut butter. And so people are holding it up, and visually that, as well as literally, was kind of a profound kind of collective sharing, and a thing that a lot of us do and do wonderfully. Like I've been part of churches as a pastor where we're like, all right, we're going to shoot for 250 jars of this, and we take a picture. And that's my setup to myself to talk about how do we greatly expand filling the jar of economic justice.
Yes, 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 yes. Real quick before we move on, Bodo's Bagels, yes or no?
Oh, yes. Oh
Yes,
my
okay.
goodness. You
Yeah.
know Bodo's?
I do know Bodo's, yes.
Y'all, it's worth visiting Charlottesville, Virginia just for Bodo's Bagels. Like I had friends in college also who moved to Nicaragua after college, and they had people fly Bodo's Bagels down there for them. They missed it so much. It's a special
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, well, if you ever get a shipment out this way, just let me know. But in that transition, what are some questions that congregations can ask themselves um, about their work around economic justice? Because I think that that will build off of what you were talking about a little bit earlier in regards to mutual aid, as well as an invitation to share what it is that you've been working so hard on. Because what we hear at the national staff, I don't know if you hear this, I hear this, is like, we just need resources, right? We need resources. How can you support us in that? So I know that you've been working really hard at creating some resources. So yeah, what are some questions that churches can ask themselves about what work their church is doing around economic justice? And then what is it that we can do to help resource them or use?
Sure. And here's where I'll break it down kind of more simply and methodically, compared to just holding forth. Though I'm loving this conversation and being in living. So I mentioned I'm a grassroots organizer, and I am very goal driven and goal oriented, meaning I'm always asking at small, medium, and large levels and in my own life, what are we kind of solving for, and are we achieving what we say we want to do? And I think this is an encouragement and challenge I have for churches in general, not just on justice work. As an intentional interim minister, like we say we're this thing, okay, is it backed up by the evidence? And then, do we want to be that? So I break things down, both to keep myself sane because there are so many headlines and there are so many issues, but they're all connected. And so, what at any given time, um, I'll use the metaphor of a river, right? The river of life is flowing. There's a lot going in and out. Some people need to rest along the banks. But for the purposes of this analogy, the way I think about simplifying, not oversimplifying, but simplifying where we find ourselves and how we can access the flow with where we are and feel effective. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's all about where you are in the flow. I think about how some churches, some folks are ready or needing to go wading in the shallows. And that's a beautiful and good thing. That could look like deepening discipleship and understanding, like this year's All Church Reads being led by our racial justice ministry colleagues, building up a new world, congregational organizing for transformative impact. There's a chapter on kind of all the things and helping churches understand, as we've been talking about, themselves as organizing bodies. This is a book to take you beyond book groups. Not to say do away with them, but if you're like, gosh, we're always like talking about all the things and reading the latest thing, it's just to help understand like the work is being done. And this is a beautiful discipleship enterprise because discipleship, deepening our connection to ourselves, is also the thing that keeps us in the work for a long time and not burning out. So that's why I say nothing is more or less important than the other. Another way we can find ourselves in the river is, oh, go ahead.
Seth, real quick, is like also there's liturgy that was created around that book, right? So I
Yes.
think it was Eastertide, right? So between Easter and Pentecost, there was liturgy on sermon seeds and worship ways that was created. So if this is a book, you don't have to have done it when it was created, right? If this is a book that you're introducing in the fall, you can use some of those Eastertide sermons then as well, right? Or even next year. So it is something that if you are a congregation member and you want your congregation to focus on some of the topics that are in this book, you can go to the pastor and be like, there you go. All your liturgy is written for you.
That's
Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's great. No, that's exactly it. It doesn't even beyond book groups, into our worship services. This is all the stuff that keeps us spiritually nourished. So that's my wading analogy. Another way folks can get into the work of, or the way I break it down, and you'll find this on my Economic Justice new website, ucc.org/fill the jar, is tubing. Down the river in the flow. And this is where, in this analogy, I encourage churches to look at their own economic justice practices. We're out here saying we need a living wage, healthcare, everything. Are we practicing those things? Are we modeling the economy we say we need for those we employ? Are we helping those in our pews who um, need all sorts of stuff, who may be on disability, who may be between jobs and everything, lifting them up? Are we practicing? And because people see that stuff. And also, like I said, in the current climate of all the things, um, this isn't putting off what needs to happen out there to focus on. We start at home and we understand and learn how to take care of each other. And then another way to get at things when I kind of break it down into buckets is for folks who are whitewater ready, because the rivers get choppy. And this is where I've come up kind of inspired by food drive campaigns, with um, what I'm calling fill the jar campaigns. JAR is an acronym for God's economic justice of jubilee, abundance, and reparations. And this year is the first one, starting with kind of a straightforward goal of trying to revitalize Labor Sunday. This is a thing we, in the United Church of Christ, we more formally did for several years. And so I'm asking churches this year, recognizing that some have marked Labor Sunday for years, but from our part to say like, hey, broadly, we stand with worker rights. The United Church of Christ has passed all these resolutions in support of any number of specific workers, and needs. Um, why is Labor Day weekend a thing? let's market. And so I've put together a new evergreen, I hope evergreen, sample liturgy for churches to pull from this year. It doesn't even have to be just on Labor Day weekend. There's going to be suggested hymns, including two new ones that I've commissioned from someone in the UCC, sermon prompts, responsive readings, that sort of thing that can be used whenever. And so within each campaign are also, that's like the wading in the water option. That's the soul work. That's the balancing. Then the tubing option is looking within. So I break this thing down again, right? The tubing option is, hey, in our church's procurement, we all have budgets and we buy things. Maybe it's t-shirts for a special event or food for any number of events. Are we prioritizing union-made goods, fairly made things? Were these made, and if not, maybe we shouldn't get those t-shirts. Are we buying produce that is covered under the protections of the Immokalee Workers Fair Food Program and prioritizing those things? So asking churches to make those commitments. I'm not coming around with a report card. Um, and then the whitewater action, so to speak, this year is asking, you don't have to do all three. You can pick one, two, or three. I'm just trying to get us back to, hey, Labor Sunday is a thing we do. And this is going to be the ask every year while I try to prove out this new platform I've been working on. The whitewater action, so to speak, is asking congregations to find workers fighting for their rights in their community. Could be at a town hall, could be at a city hall, could be striking. And I've talked to pastors who have done this work, and their congregations have been so enlivened by it. I was talking to a pastor in the Chicago area, and they bring sandwiches to workers on the picket line fighting for protections in like the tortilla factory. And they're like, oh my God, people of faith care about this. Like, we do this stuff already. We make sandwiches for each other and just being like, hey, stay hydrated, stay fed. And that became a news story because it's like, look at all these church folks just showing up in solidarity. So I'm not trying to prescribe too much, but just try to break it down, right, into these buckets. Where are you in the river's flow? You could do all three things. You could go through the book. You could um, take a fine, look at like start conversations about like, hey, we should really be taking a leap of faith. Yeah, budgets are tight right now, but hey, maybe they're tight because like what we're doing isn't working. So what do we have to lose by, I believe you invest in excellence to get excellence. People thrive when they have what they need to survive, right? And then also saying, and we want a clear-cut campaign. This crystallizes it for us. So at least that's my hope and prayer. I'm not saying I have all the answers, but it's like here's a clear-cut campaign. We can mark Labor Sunday. We can take a look at whether what we purchase is union made or not, and where those opportunities exist. Um, and we can say like, hey, is the local Starbucks unionizing? Um, there's any number of whitewater actions you could take from bringing sandwiches to, if you feel called to it, I'll walk you through this too, like chaining yourselves to the doors of some exploitative corporation and refusing to leave until they pay a living wage. There's options.
Yeah, lots of different options. Yeah, definitely. And thank you for that, Seth. Um, go ahead, folks. If you are participating live, we invite you to go ahead and put your question into the Q&A feature, which is a dialogue bubble with a question mark in the middle of it. And if you have a question that arises afterwards, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm not the one, but your email for a reminder for today's webinar came from me. Thankfully, to our tech team on the back end, I want to thank them for all the work that they do to help this come off to you all and get into your phone, computer screens, sound systems in your car, whatever it is. So thank you for that. But go ahead and put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them. I think I do have one final question though. We talked a lot about, I don't know, I heard a lot of dreaming today in good ways, right? So like if we were, you and I have gone back and forth over the past 2 years of using a lot of like gardening analogies and stuff. And I like how, being that you're a whale, an orca fan in particular, that you've moved to the water. Yeah, that you got the water analogies in here. But I've heard a lot of like really beautiful um, doula work happening in today's conversation. Doula work meaning that you are helping people be able to sit in the spaces of labor contractions, right? When birth is happening, it's a painful process, it's a tense process, it's a nervous and precarious position. And in that, a doula comes and is alongside of that birthing process while also helping to know that the dream is coming, that the goodness and the rebirth and the birth or whatever is coming. And so I hear a lot of your invitations to us as this doula work as we figure out how it is that we exist in a world that is filled with so much pain right now, right? And I'm really appreciative of that. So what is it that you hope for?
Um, Thank you. That's a beautiful and honoring analogy. Because it's certainly what I strive for, which is like, um, in my own organizing and activism work, I certainly have never been accused of being patient. At the same time, my background and degree is in pastoral care and counseling. And so really anything I say is always preach to myself, like, are we doing breath work, right? The importance of a doula, my first experience was last year at the birth of my daughter. And it was funny at the time, and more so in retrospect, how, because of course this is the breathing you have to do, right? Just as a little segue to where I find hope. But I was so into it and I didn't realize it that they're like, Dad, you need to breathe. You're going to pass out. Like, I was like pushing, and they were like, there are fathers in the delivery room who we've had faint and pass out, like, because they're just like, they're subconsciously straining. I was one of those. So, always aiming to practice what I preach is the point there. So yeah, where do I find hope? Because, you know, I mentioned this piece on moral injury I wrote for Witness for Justice in the UCC, which is my attempt to be honest and real and find if some of these feelings resonate with folks, that you're straining for breath, pushing, but you don't know how or where to expel it, right? And we're also not crazy for wondering if things are that crazy making, right? Like I, for years, preached the gospel, inspired by the gospel, preached the gospel of this many letters, this many phone calls, this many visits to our elected leaders will, change the course towards justice in spite of our country's overinvestment in grotesque militarism and enriching the rich, right? And I have been shaken and sobered to my core by the fact that we are pouring billions into executing a live stream genocide. Um, it's bipartisan, and the majority will of the people is overwhelmingly against it. And we're being ignored at best and violently suppressed at worst. And to me, this is some of what I wrote about. Um, that is a moral injury I think all of us need to name and reckon with to find hope, right? It's not to say keep fighting. I fought to end it. I've been arrested in my own efforts to stop the genocide, along many others across all faiths. And I think we need to reckon with that because when we say like we need living wages, we need worker rights, we need healthcare, we need to end hunger. We need to end houselessness. Just in the past 2 years alone, could have ended hunger and houselessness in the United States with what we've sent to do the worst thing ever, the crime of crimes, we're taught. This isn't to overwhelm anyone, it's to crack open with honesty and truth how and where can we move forward and hope. I find hope. What do I hope for, or where do I find hope?
Hey,
I
whatever.
just needed to say that piece. So I find hope in a couple. I hope for a general strike. Because as an organizer, I'll just say that, like, and a lot of people th say things are hopeless, but um, to bring it back to economic justice is like people have power. None of this goes on if we decide it stops. It's not to say we were wrong all the time. We're just saying we need to activate and find some solidarity around some new tools and power, stuff that's never been tried, because No one's ever tried to execute a genocide against the will of the people that everyone can see is happening. That could have solved for our needs and wants. So some good news is that the United Auto Workers have actually authorized moving forward towards a general strike. I don't know if people know this. Because that kind of thing takes a while to organize, they're aiming for 2028. And I can hear many of you saying what I'm saying in my head, which is we don't have that much time. I've talked to some folks at the UAW and they're like, yeah, that might be too long. But the fact that this isn't just some pie in the sky hashtag on social media, though things can get traction that way. And I'm not trying to jump out to the biggest, boldest thing because just remember everything else we talked about. It starts with solidarity, economies, mutual aid, community. But I hope for a general strike, right? There was a brief period there when the COVID pandemic shut off where folks were understanding of needs and wants. Child poverty was cut in half in this country because people got what they needed. And there were like during a harrowing
Yeah.
uh, mass disabling event and death event, but we had to ask ourselves, what does it mean to be human? So I hope for a general strike. I find hope in labor leaders like Chris Smalls. Um, and for those who aren't know, he's the Amazon labor union leader from New York who unionized one of the first successful, I think in Brooklyn, who joined the most recent Freedom Flotilla to Gaza. Along with several other Americans, British folks, and everything. They were, of course, detained, arrested. He was the only one separated from the rest of the group and beaten. And for those who don't know, he's also the only black member of that group, beaten by, but he is now free and home. And as he reminds us, an injury to one is an injury to all, common union slogan. So just bringing it back to when we support worker rights, when we mark Labor Sunday, why Labor Day is a thing. I want to leave time for questions, but I can give you a whole paragraph on Labor Day. But I hope for a general strike. I'm grateful there are folks kind of putting it on the line, and while we all can't necessarily join a boat or join quote unquote the front lines, there's people who need to bring water and sandwiches, and we know how to do that. And yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So somebody asked, what is an example of how a church can support workers every day outside of a strike?
Sorry, say that again.
How can what is an example of how a church can support workers every day outside of a strike?
Outside of a strike, support workers. Well, like I said, as I mentioned earlier, look out for the fights for wages, healthcare. Look for where folks are exploited and ask them. See, this is the thing I love to encourage churches to do. Oftentimes, and I've been guilty of this in the past too, we're like, what can we do? What can we do? What are we going to do? If there's nursing home workers in your area, just go ask them. And there's usually organizing efforts. I say this as an encouragement. Um, we just ask them like when we just tell them when you say jump, we'll say how high because we actually have stuff and resources and accompaniment that we can bring. And that's to me the greatest, not to use capitalistic language, but advertisement for Jesus and who we are as a church. People are hungry and interested in this. My organizing work in Charlottesville was not meant to be evangelistic, but showing up in the streets in solidarity with community members being attacked by Nazis and white supremacists 8 years ago. I can't tell you how many folks came up to us like, yo, I don't like the church. Wait, where do y'all go? Where are y'all from? What are y'all doing out here? And, so I would say just do a little research, whatever's in your local paper, local news. There's a lot more out there, and I'll help you find it too. I have been encouraged talking to, as part of this campaign, I've talked to pastors and lay leaders all over the country and finding many who, including many pastors who used to be union organizers before joining the UCC. So I'd say just
Yeah,
find out and ask people what they want and need. I'm not going to prescribe that. I mean, we know what people need to survive and thrive. I guarantee, though, there is a local need and effort. And oftentimes they're like, hey, just will you support us while we go to court or go to city hall and raise your voice? You actually don't it frees us up so much. And
yeah,
of course, if those needs are in our congregations, And I think I'm thinking a lot more about this. Sorry, this is the last thing I do want to say though, is like I'm doing a lot of thinking after Labor Day weekend this year of wanting to know where churches and church members are experiencing. Because I do think, with these tariffs going into effect, there's been a lot of back and forth. So I haven't spoken out too much about them because it's been all over the place. But we're collectively in need. This isn't about like us having the answers and resources and, oh, the need and charity is over here.
Yeah.
We're all getting pinched and something's going to break. Um, and we can be there to rebuild, but we're going to have to rebuild ourselves too.
And rebuild together. I love that. Who are our partners in the labor in the pulpit? I know like they're like, yes. So Jobs with Justice, do they still have a support kit? Yeah. Who are our partners? Who have you worked through or with to get some of these resources
Oh,
out? And
sure.
where can we find them?
So ucc.org/fill-the-jar/act. We partner with a lot of folks. Yes, I see the Poor People's Campaign. I've been friendly in solidarity with them. For Labor Sunday specifically, I'm partnering with the AFL-CIO, Federation of Labor nationwide, and National Farm Workers Ministry. The AFL-CIO has a Labor in the Pulpit program, and for churches that are interested in marking Labor Sunday, whatever Sunday they do it over the next couple months, the AFL-CIO, the counterpart over there, will help provide, if churches want it, a labor leader to do like a 5 minute for mission as part of the service to say, here's what's going on locally. And they have folks all over the country. So that's pretty exciting offering. So for interested churches, I put y'all in touch with them. Same with like farm worker rights, depending on where you are. Like there's a mushroom boycott in the Seattle Pacific Northwest area. So if you're a church up there and want one of those leaders to come, I can put you in touch with National Farm Worker Ministry and that sort of thing. So those were my partners for this. Again, this is kind of a proof of concept year and hope it's just a snowball that can kind of roll until more and more folks are like, oh yeah, this is what we do Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, I love that. Someone says, I didn't know there was a mushroom boycott. I need to know more. Yes. So there was this great question that said, I'm feeling that the faith and labor nexus is my kind of highest calling. And I'm all in for Labor Sunday, but I worry about the focus on the Sunday of Labor Day weekend, given the multiple implications of that transitional weekend in the annual calendar. That Sunday is one of the least attended of the year. Plus, it's the weekend when our labor allies often are doing other events that it would be great for faith allies to attend. So isn't there a way we can revisit that one Sunday idea and at least envision Labor Month or Solidarity September, or other people have said lift up Annual Workers Memorial Day on April
Mm-hmm.
28th. So yeah, so there.
100%. And actually, for all those reasons and more, some churches are choosing to do it on because of lower attendance and on like September 7th or September 14th this year. So there's no right or wrong answer on the weekend. And because sometimes, yeah, like vacations are ending, school's starting, and people are just kind of coming out and being like, if I think if it was me, if I had like a congregation right now as a pastor, I'd be like, hey, remember that Monday we just got off? What was that all about? And you can kind of access it that way and being like, um, and I'm at, how are we on time?
We're finishing up this question and we're going to head into our responsive reading. So we're
So
good.
yeah, I might just add a little blurb that I'm pulling from. So while for some, Labor Day was a revolution that started as a parade, and there's a little blurb that I am putting in the sample liturgy that I mentioned for a little context. But I just say from it, I won't read the whole thing. Yeah, well, for some, Labor Day simply marks the end of summer. It emerged out of organized labor movements where increasing attention was being focused on thousands of people in England who are dying every year from poor working conditions and long hours. And then it kind of walks through how did it become to parades, to a national holiday in 1894. But I want to add this part. It is estimated that this year more than 40% of businesses will remain open this Labor Day, and the vast majority of staff members on the clock will be those from within the working class, the people who are meant to be honored by the holiday. So that might be a good segue to there's a couple different call to worship options to where and how we center ourselves as places of Sabbath and rest and meeting need, because this irony in naming these things can and must move us beyond the actual Labor Day weekend. That's my encouragement there. So yeah, no need to do it on August 31st or whatever it is this year.
It can be any day, it can be any Sunday, it can be any liturgical cycle when the topic of work and economic justice comes up. There's lots of those, I imagine, in the Bible. I don't think our Bible, our scriptures are void of those scriptures for sure. You have written and you've had other folks really going to support your liturgical resources for this special Sunday and or other Sundays. And
Mhm.
I'm curious if we could share one together now.
Yes. Which one shall we do to
How
the
about today being Sabbath, since you mentioned that in the previous?
yeah, and breath work. And there's a like I do believe as the saying goes, rest is resistance. So whenever you're watching this, whether it's today live with us or later, this is a sample call to worship. That's right. Um, so yeah, just a little sample of one that I've written for it. Today is a Sabbath.
We are called to rest.
This space is for Sabbath.
We have come here to rest.
For all who are lonely,
May we find belonging.
for all who are weary,
May we find rest.
for all who labor,
May we find renewal.
for all who are not afforded belonging, rest, and renewal.
May we embody solidarity with those longing for community, wages, and Sabbaths that everyone deserves.
Today is a Sabbath.
Let us find rest and worship together the one who provides rest from labor, loneliness, and weariness. Amen. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Seth, for this conversation. Let's not have it be a whole year before we get on. Again, we have some more projects we can definitely be doing. I do want to looking for responsive readings, maybe assign taking glory's back. Okay. Yeah. You check out the chat.
The chat
Anyway,
is
I
great.
just,
I'm loving it. All the
yeah,
stuff,
right.
home care workers, the mushroom boycott. Yeah, like
All of it.
I hope this
Yeah.
is just a launching ground. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us live for the webinar today. Please share it with others because you are a gift. We are a gift in this world together, collectively caring for all of God's people. And I want to invite you to our next webinar next Thursday, August 14th, this time at 12 noon Eastern Time, because our special guest is going to be zooming in from Belfast. We are going to be in conversation for our Future of Faith series featuring Reverend Dr. Gary Mason, where we're going to explore why at times religion seems to be dishonest about the things that it gets wrong, and how our instinctive reaction is to protect the institution and not tell the truth. He wants us to ask ourselves, has religion been the catalyst for war and division? And if so, what conversations do we need to have to rectify that? And so I want to invite Seth back onto the screen to give us a benediction to take us all out. And I will see you all next Thursday. If you have a question that hasn't been answered or anything at all, send me an email and I will connect you to Seth. Seth, give us your benediction.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Funny enough, well, the end is the beginning, the Alpha and Omega. This is the other call to worship option in the liturgy to send us all out. On Labor Day, we honor our work, physical and mental, paid and unpaid, joyous and heartbreaking. We give thanks for work's gifts, suffer its difficulties, and strive to make labor just and joyous for all. Our work can build our society, provide for our material needs, and give our life meaning. We labor in gratitude. Our work can damage our society and the planet, fail to sustain our material needs, and be meaningless. We join together to create work that supports the well-being of all. Our work can heal the world, help us understand who we are, and keep us safe. We labor in joy. Our work can harm the world, demean us, and expose us to danger. We join together to create work that is safe and humane. Our work can fill our days with accomplishments and our lives with stories. We labor in love. Our work can dissatisfy and alienate us. We may not be able to find enough work or any work. We join together to create work that blesses us, all people, and the planet. This Labor Day and all Labor Days to come, may our work and all work serve humanity and all living beings. Amen.
Siblings in Christ, if you are moved by this conversation, if what's been offered here has helped enhance your ministry or has nurtured your soul for the journey, please consider donating to the annual fund of the United Church of Christ by texting UCC to 41444. Your support will help to provide programs like this, which are an essential part of our ministries in the United Church of Christ. Thank you for your support. Be blessed on your journey and know that you are not alone. We are holding you in prayer. Amen.